No idea. Which
it's
sort of
both-
time.
All right, thank you.
My baby,
No,
yeah,
no.
month.
Why don't you come back that way so I can go to
Me
the
and
board?
me and Mama
occasion?
crash into this position together.
You guys are gonna be on the when I turn it. Cool. Okay.
I'll down you. I'll turn it.
Good. All right, let me go over. I couldn't read all of y'all's
I think that's
papers,
done.
but
I also see that.
I got a
Why
few of,
you-
thank you. All right, I just have a few of you. I don't have all of you this time, so don't feel offended. But I want to go over some of your comments, which are excellent. I mean, you guys are really starting to read well, right? Yes, you did good. I have you there. Yeah, that's a good sign. You should have a hard time. Text is difficult, right? So
It's finding the question and the criticism is like.
no, you did good. I have you here. I'm starting with you actually. So yeah, no, you guys are really starting to understand how to read this. This is the method, right? You find the details that jump out at you, like this is unusual or you're perplexed, and then you'll see how this is a key to allow you to go deeper. So I'll start with Watson. That's you, right? Okay. Very interesting thing. You say, how did you put it exactly? You talk about the knowledge, right? Yes, here it is. Yes, if the woman is supposed to, so you go back to Genesis 2, the woman is supposed to be the source of wisdom, the advisor of man. So of course she's going to seek knowledge, right? So what's the problem, right? Why is she punished for seeking knowledge? That's what she's supposed to do. She's supposed to be an advisor, a source of wisdom. So that's excellent question. So the word there that is used for knowledge, it comes back in a very interesting passage, right in chapter 4. In the King James Version, it's a little better. And of course, in the Hebrew, you see the connection right away. The man knew his wife Eve. That's the same word. Okay, tree of knowledge. Oh, wait, give me the Hebrew. Now now I'm hesitating here. Maybe this is all wrong. Yes, thank you. Okay, quick, let me go to that. Where is that tree of knowledge? Somebody give me the verse. Oh gosh, how does this work? Ooh. Okay, what's the verse and where you talk about the tree of knowledge? Is there someone who knows Hebrew better than me?
I think it's the same word.
Is it, please?
It's
Da'at?
like Tovera, Tovera, and then.
Hadat. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Okay, I was worried it was
And
Chokhmah.
then
and I
it's
was
like, who your dad? Like.
okay,
that-
we good. Yes, is that, thank you. All right, you're going to be my point of reference. Okay, good.
For the Hebrew, sure.
Yes, very good. So yes, I thought it was another word for wisdom, but it's actually knowledge. So it's a knowledge of good and evil. And then the next time you have the word knowledge, you have, and the man knew Eve. Okay, so you have, first of all, so let's see the difference. There's a difference. And it's as though God, you're going to see, is going to reorient Eve to a different type of knowledge, right? So she starts out longing for this tree knowledge, right? And you'll see in the whole curse punishment, you're going to see God reorienting Eve, but I just wanted to point it out here. So as we talk about, in fact, I can do it right now, the tree in the ancient Near East, so going back to that, to remember, we're reading these texts through the ancient Near Eastern lens, because that's the context. The tree symbolism has to do with goddess symbolism. The goddesses in the ancient Near East were symbolized by a tree. And notably, the biggest goddess at the time was Inanna, Inanah, right? So, and she's symbolized by a tree, and she's also, incidentally, the goddess of wisdom, right? And there's also even, sadly, we didn't do too much Inanna literature, but there's another story of Inanna next to a tree, right? So there's a lot of parallels between the goddess Inanna and Eve, right? So when Eve is looking at this tree, what she's really looking for is divine goddess knowledge. She's aspiring to be a goddess. That's what's going on, right? So you see the knowledge is aspirational. I want to be a goddess. That's the type of knowledge. And then we'll see in chapter 4, she's reoriented towards the man, and now it's a different type. It's the same word, knowledge, right? But now it's a more embodied knowledge of relational knowledge, right? So I just wanted to, this very good point that you mentioned, Watson, and it actually got me really thinking about these two, and it fits, you'll see, we'll come back to this point, it fits with the whole orientation, I think, of the interpretation. But make sure you jot this down, that she has this aspirational goddess knowledge, and then she's reoriented to a different type of knowledge, which is a relational knowledge. This is the basis of what I'm going to say today. So thank you. Novoa, rationale of punishment. Yes. So you wonder, okay, why? This is very smart. You wonder, why is he choosing that particular kind of punishment? Right? What's the rationale of the punishment, right? And this is the question I also asked. When I looked at the text, I was like, why is he giving her this type of punishment? What's he trying to do? And what I found is that each time the punishment fits perfectly with the fault and redeems it. Every punishment in the biblical text, excluding death, right, is redemptive. There's always a desire to bring the person out of the, kind of lost state they were in into something better. So we will see today that the punishment, you can look at each punishment and see that it has in fact a redemptive impact on the person. It's not to crush, right?
Yeah.
So we can see that. You can even go deeper. Look, well, the snake is kind of screwed, but the man and the woman, right? The punishment there actually has a kind of elevating function, and we'll look at that a little bit. So very nice, good question. Romero, why is the tree in the middle? What is God doing? I think I mentioned this, right? God, remember, in the book of Genesis, is an instigator. He's provoking stuff, right? He's not in authority. We're not yet in the authority hierarchy, right? We're in the instigating. And so putting the tree in the middle, almost like he wants them to eat the bloody fruit, right? So perhaps he does, right? There's feminist commentary on this, where they actually say, yeah, it was God wanted them to eat the fruit because you cannot become an adult without going through the transgression of the father's commands, kind of Freudian, right? You have to overcome. In fact, there's an article that was published in the special issue we did with this class last semester. This class hosted a conference, and we published the papers, and one of the guys who wrote, and you should look it up, is exactly, it kind of said like they needed to transgress to grow up. And kind of God is like instigating. So I don't follow that line of interpretation, but I like it. I mean, there's another way to interpret, but this is interesting, right? To see this moment of eating the fruit as a moment of coming of age, necessary transgression, right? In order to grow up into adulthood. And right after the transgression, they're man and wife, right? That's when they have a more adult relationship. So that's one possible interpretation, right? Why is in the middle of the garden? I just wanted to orient you to that. You guys should read, you should check it out. Check out the special issue on this text. So I gathered a bunch of commentators to look at redemptive readings of this text, Genesis 3:16, that we're going to study. And just type in, my name and then special issue and then Eve's curse. And you should find a bunch of articles on particularly this passage, right? Good. Moving quickly to, yeah. Yes, actually, let me skip. Yeah, let me skip the rest. Okay, let's get really good points, right? Let's get into the actual text because we have limited time and I don't want to rush. So I'll try to get more of you guys next time. But this time that was already just to show you that you are doing, whoever I called out, that's really good reading, right? That's exactly how I want you to start reading. And you're going to get better and better at this. Okay, Genesis 3:16. But before we get to that, let's go over quickly the history of interpretation of this text, right? Okay, you saw, I'm zooming in on Genesis 3:16. Everything I'm going to do, because this is the text of violence, right? The text of terror here is this one. I'll read it to you. Genesis 3:16. This is the curse of the woman, so-called curse on the woman. It goes like this. God tells the woman, I will intensify your toil in childbearing and pain. You shall bring forth children. Here's the key concept. Yet, this is interesting, the yet, I need to point that out also. Yes, yet your urge, it's bad translation, your desire, right? Your desire will be for your husband and he shall rule over you, okay? This passage has destroyed our lives for the past 2000 years, right? So let me give you some. So I've gone over the history of interpretation of this passage. Both, and it's so weird, both Jewish and Christian commentators agree. Right, they agree. I'm suspicious right away, right? If they both, normally they're always fighting on everything else. But when it comes to this passage, they all agree on the following. They all agree that the woman messed up It's because of her all of this happened. In fact, she was the first one who took the fruit. Without her, everything would have been fine, right? So she messed up. And because she's weak, remember Aristotle, right? Notice how these interpretations are aligned with Aristotle much more than with the biblical text that we studied so far, right? The woman is weak. That's not what we saw. She's supposed to be military, right? Reinforcements. She's very strong in Genesis 2, right? So this notion of the woman as weak is not a biblical idea. Where does it come from? You remember when we studied Aristotle? That's where it comes from, right? So these so-called Jewish and Christian interpreters are following much more a Greek line of thought than a biblical line of thought, right? So the woman is weak. She's morally, fragile. So of course she was deceived by the serpent, obviously. And then because of that, the man, of course, who apparently, right, is able to resist temptation, he now needs to rule over her because clearly he's on a higher moral ground. All good, right? Now, you see how this not only contradicts Genesis 2, right? And I'll give you the details again why, but it also aligns perfectly with Aristotle. So my theory here is that the Jewish and Christian commentators agree because they were influenced by Aristotelian thought, right? They're going along Hellenistic Greek lines. They're not following the biblical text. Does that make sense? Because weak, we don't see. We see strong, military reinforcement, ezer, right? We don't see morally decadent, right? We don't see morally fragile in Genesis 2. We see a woman who is able to save her man from moral decay, right? So it's the opposite. So you see how this particular text, which follows Genesis 2, cannot possibly have this view of woman. So it's coming into the text from the outside, right? This interpretation is not emerging from the text. It's coming from the outside. It's coming under the influence of Greek thought. And the man as being morally superior, likewise, you don't see in Genesis 2, right? On the contrary, the man needs the woman to be able to remain balanced on a moral level, right? You follow me? Okay, so, and remember we studied Aristotle, so we can clearly see through these interpretations. In fact, I was reading them and the language is just plagiarism of Aristotle. It's like they use exactly the same language. And this is both Jewish and Christian commentators who, and of course, not surprising, they made these commentaries. They all were thinking within the Hellenistic Greek culture, right? This is when rabbinic thought emerged. This is when the Christian interpretation emerges right after Jesus. That's when the Christians arrive, right? This is all in a Greek context, right? Okay. So obviously now, and so of course, historically, it builds on that, right? So historically, the woman and every church, synagogue from there on, right, start to say, well, the woman, she needs to be kept in check. She needs to be controlled. She needs to be, the man needs to rule over her. Even Christian biblical interpretation seems to go in that direction. We're going to debunk it, but the Apostle Paul, right, when he talks about gender relations in Ephesians, also uses a very Greek language. The man is the head of the woman because the woman took the fruit, right? So we're going to look at that text too. But from then on, right, there was the idea that woman is the weaker sex, man needs to be the authority, the head of the home, etc. This is coming from here, right? Not so much from here as from Aristotle, right? So the Aristotle has in a way transfigured the way we've seen this passage, and in my view has distorted the way we've seen this passage. So far, so good. Any questions? Everybody with me, or is there anybody discomfort? Is there any discomfort? Okay, all right. So let's then go. What I want to do now is look at it in a both ancient Near Eastern and biblical Hebraic lens. So we want to make use of the Hebrew. I'm going to do a little bit of remez today. So remember the 4 layers of interpretation, right? Let me remind you, there was the pshat, the literal, the remez, which is the use of grammatical, Hebrew, stylistic stuff. Remember, just look in your notes. Then the drash, which we do a lot when we're asking questions and struggling with the text. Sod, we barely do. It's the mystical interpretation, which we probably won't touch on, right? So I'm doing some remez today. I'm going to look at the stylistic features, the way the text is constructed, not what it says, but the way that it's put together also has some subliminal message. You follow? So make sure you jot this down, right? In the Hebrew writing, you have the content, but the form also matters. The way the author constructs the text, the architecture of the text also has meaning, also is going to give us some clues, right? So I'm going to look at I'm going to look how this text is constructed, and you're going to see something very interesting without even reading the text. Something will emerge that's very powerful. So, all right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you first what the hypothesis is, show it to you in the structure, and then explain. So this particular verse, I would like to argue, based on the structure, that it is not a punitive verse. This is not a punishment moment. It's not a punitive moment. Okay, that's the first point I'm making. Okay, this particular 3:16, which we have thought was a punishment for woman for her sins, and now man will rule over her. There, right? Serves you right, right? I'm gonna say this is not a moment of punishment. This is actually a redemptive moment. Now, this is completely new interpretation. Nobody has done this, right? But now we have, right? Last spring, we started to do this, but it hasn't been done yet in the mainstream. You guys are in the cutting edge right now, research, right? So this is how I'm going to argue for this. I want to show you in the structure that this verse is qualitatively different from the rest of the curse, right? You have the curse of the serpent, curse of the woman, curse of the man, right? But what I'm going to show you in the structure, this text emerges as qualitatively different. It's in a way, the author is pulling it out intentionally, saying, this is punishment, but this, something else. You follow so far? Yes? Okay, let me draw you on the switch the computer. We have our, okay, watch this. Now, please let there be chalk. Okay, yes, good. All right, so we have, here's the structure. Let's see this. Okay, we have serpent, woman, man, right? Okay, serpent, and I can do this in English. It will work. Woman, man. All right, so we already have a preliminary structure. First the serpent, the woman, then the man. Okay, the woman already is in the middle. That should give you a little bell, right? This is significant because middle, okay, I need to say this well. In the ancient Near Eastern literature, the middle of the passage is usually the key, right? So this is kind of like they write in this style that they always want to go, as soon as you reach the middle, you know that there's something important there. That's kind of the key to the whole passage. So the fact that the woman is in the middle is already giving us a hint. Anyways, continuing. So then he says to the serpent, so I'm on chapter 3, verse 14. The Lord God said to the snake, because you have done this, okay, so because you sinned, because you did this mistake, right? Now, cursed are you. Okay, so here you have both the allusion to punishment, right? You did this, therefore there's a consequence of punishment because therefore, and it's a curse. Bah! Cursed are you, right? That's the first thing. The man, similar structure. It's interesting. We go to the man, so we skip the woman for now. To the man, he said, verse 17, same idea. Because, right? Therefore, because you listen to your wife, blah, 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 therefore, cursed is the ground. Okay. All right. So you can see here, this is very typical of Hebrew literature. You have a chiasm. It's called a chiasm. Let me write it down. Kind of a chiasm, right? You have A1, center. Okay, that's very typical, right? So you have one point, same point, and then in the middle, the woman. Now, this is what's interesting. For the woman, you have neither because, meaning she did nothing wrong. That's interesting, right? Because up here, because you did this, so there's the implication of you did something wrong, and therefore, puff, puff, right? The woman doesn't have the word because. There's nothing like that. To the woman, he said, ba, 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 ba. Not because you did. So there's no mention here of a possible fault, right? So I'm going to write it down. Seems, or at least the text structurally, seems to imply there's no fault. And at the same time, it's the only text, interestingly, where there is no curse. So when we talk about the woman's curse, I don't know where we're getting it from. Because only the snake and the man have the element of curse. So structurally, already from all of this, right? The fact that it's in the middle, no, it's a different, it's not in a punitive context. We don't have the word curse, right? Already starting to emerge as different, right? Now, here's the boom, the final, what do you call it? I don't know, give me an expression, like the final thing that really drives it home, right? Yes?
I think.
Yeah, thank you. I like that. In the Hebrew, and this is so much fun, if you count the number of words in the Hebrew from here to here, you have exactly 48 words. And from here to here, you have exactly 48 words. This is exactly in the middle. This is incredibly significant, right? So what I'm deducing from the structure, right, is that the woman's, whatever is being said to the woman has nothing to do with punishment, has nothing to do with curse, right? It's qualitatively different, including the notion that it says yet, right? Shifts, right? Therefore, I would argue we are not in the context of punishment or curse. And it's a quick jump I'm making, but there's a way to argue it, which I don't want to get into. Therefore, why not? Therefore, I would argue that it's perhaps not punitive, but redemptive. The redemptive, just in passing, I don't want to go into the detail, but you have parallels between 3:16 and 3:15. If you're a Christian, what does 3:15 point to? Anybody know? I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. They will strike your head while you strike at their heel. Yeah.
Well, no, not the D15, but more like, well, I'm saying like, if he's giving her like the option to like give birth now, he's saying I will. Like he's protecting her in her creation, rather than the because part saying in a circle.
See, I love what you're saying. Yeah,
You know.
this is excellent. It's life, right? We are surrounded by death. Remember, it's just been, it's over, right? They ate the fruit, supposed to die. And here, that's another thing, right? Instead of talking about cursed, it's talking about life, right? Albeit painful life, but life, right? So the childbirth, which we have seen for so long as a curse on woman, she'll suffer. Actually, there's the element of life, which we keep on forgetting, right? So she's the life giver, which Adam later is going to recognize, right? So just in passing, right? Why I say it's not punitive, but how can I argue it's redemptive? Parallels between Genesis 3:16 and Genesis 3:15. Anybody who is the Christians among us? Yeah. But it's also in the Jewish tradition. How does the Jewish tradition interpret Genesis 3:15?
I mean, this is how,
Rabbinic tradition.
are you referring to how your dad interpreted 350?
No, the rabbinic tradition.
I don't.
My dad actually is in line with the rabbinic tradition.
Oh, okay, so like he thinks it's a reference to the coming of Mashiach, and that
It's messianic verse,
the
right?
woman is going to give birth to somebody who's going to defeat evil. And so that's why
Exactly.
they managed,
Right, so
Circle.
check it out, right? Look it up. But the Genesis 3:15 in the rabbinic tradition, this idea of the woman crushing the snake is a connotation of in Christianity the Christ who dies and crushes evil, and in Jewish tradition the Messiah, right? So messianic prophecy. Parallels between 3:16 and 3:15 tell me then, okay, perhaps this is also a messianic or a redemptive prophecy. Am I clear? Have I made my point clear? I'm gone very fast, right? Any questions? Or
I like your point though. I really do. Like,
Okay.
honestly speaking, is like when God asked the question like who told you that I was naked, the guy answered first. Why didn't she answer first?
yeah, she's very marginalized in the story, right? We're gonna look at that.
And like he feels that fault, and then
Yeah.
she answered.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh yeah. There's a lot going on. We're gonna look at that. Yes.
Now that he pointed out that question, where was Adam?
When she ate?
Circle was
Yeah,
first.
why
Such a
weren't
good
Why
question.
weren't they like together?
Thank you.
Why, and if he was there, would he like kind of pull away? Would he listen? Like, I don't know.
You know, it's crazy because in the text it says, when she's talking to the snake, she takes the fruit, she eats it, and she gives it to her husband who was with her. The whole time, it seems, that man
Yeah.
was there, right?
Okay.
So there's a problem. Maybe not on the part of the man. We're going to look at that. Maybe it's not, right? I'm not going to say Eve was like this angel of light and Adam is like this poor idiot, right? So we're going to look at Eve in a second. It's not pretty, right? But definitely, weirdly, this is how it looks, right? Yes.
I'm actually touched on this on the homework. I believe that the snake purposely came to Eve to try to fool her
Yeah.
because if he went to Adam, he wouldn't have been able to fool him
Yes.
because Adam would have returned to Eve, and Eve, being the one that corrects, would have seen that her husband has been or that Adam has been fooled. Therefore, she wouldn't fall. She wouldn't fall to the trap that the snake had, the cunningness that he had. Which is why he went specifically to Eve, and Adam would have listened to Eve because he would have listened to her words.
Yes, he would have listened. We see that the way he's,
I
yeah,
have a question.
Yeah, go
At
ahead.
that point, they didn't know what was good and evil, so like the serpent wouldn't be deemed evil in her eyes.
no,
And
wouldn't be,
so,
absolutely
like,
not.
She'll be more curious and be like, okay, what's this animal? Like, why is the animal telling me? this?
Exactly.
It's just like a curious type of thing, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
maybe I should do it.
No, that's true. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. In fact, the text says it hints at the fact that she was deceived, but the man knew what he was doing.
Mhm.
That's why he's punished. He knew.
Mhm.
She was somewhat deceived. Remember, the command to not eat the fruit is given before Eve arrives on the scene, given to the androgynous human creature, right? So I don't know, right? So definitely there is an, okay. So let's go now into this, right? So I've shown you this, that this is the reason why I want to see that passage as redemptive, but redeeming what, right? What is it redeeming here? So in order to understand what this passage is redeeming, we have to look at the fault. Because if Eve did make a mistake, she didn't necessarily sin, but she made a mistake. There's a problem with her being, the way she dwells in the situation is deeply problematic. So I want to look first at Eve, then I want to look at Adam, where they both faltered, right? And then we're going to really understand how this verse is actually redemptive versus punitive, right? So going to Novoa, right? I want to look at exactly like you said, right? How is this verse? What's the rationale? Why? What is it redeeming? Where's the fault, right? So let's go to Eve. Okay, I'm going to say a few words about Eve. And I find Eve really very interesting character, very strong character, but at the same time, there's something deeply problematic going on with Eve, right? Let's take a look. So going back to the tree, make sure you jot this down. The tree represents the goddess, or so it represents, yeah, it represents the essence of the goddess. So when Eve is next to a tree, looking for wisdom, what she's really reaching for is not just wisdom, but she's reaching for divinity. That's really what's going on, right? That's where it's problematic. The text has no problem with Eve being associated with wisdom, with knowledge, but this is a kind of forbidden knowledge. This is this is a knowledge that comes when you are a goddess, right? What Eve is aspiring to is to become a goddess, right? Not so much about, because of the ancient Near Eastern context, the tree, what it means, that's how I'm seeing that, right? You follow? So she's aspiring. So what does that mean? She wants to be a goddess. Notice that Adam is nowhere to be found in this big quest for goddess, essence. She's over there. She sees the tree. She's, completely enamored with the tree. She wants to be this goddess. And by the way, Inanna, she ruled alone, right? Goddesses rule alone. And in that, and you can see this kind of very solitary quest for the divinity, because at no point in the story, and this is flagrant, does she address the man. She never speaks to this man. Now he speaks to her or at her, right? Remember when she's cut out from him and he sees her and he's marveling. He's like, oh, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, she will be called woman. And he's so enamored, right? Does she respond? Is there any response of that woman when he reaches to her like this? Did you see anything like, oh, honey, you too? No, right? Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. No, right? There's no reciprocity. They're not interacting. You follow me? Even he's there. Does she turn to him? Hey, what do you think? No, she's like, move over. Let me get this fruit, right? It's almost something like that. So even a way, her problem, not her sin, right? But her problem is that she functions alone. Instead of, she has not understood the divine blueprint that she's supposed to rule together with the man. That's the divine blueprint in Genesis 1, right? They were supposed to rule together. She has no contact with this man, no interest in this man. First conversation she has is with an animal, not even with the man, right? That's crazy. Whereas he's constantly moving towards her, she's moving away from him, right? And so that is the issue here. She's seeking this wisdom of the gods, not the wisdom of relationality, but wisdom of isolation, a wisdom which brings her out of her humanity. By the way, this has been the temptation of Gnosticism, of thought in general. If you look at thought throughout our whatever world, there's always the temptation to rise above our materiality and access forbidden knowledge. You see this everywhere in Greek thought, in Christian thought, in Eastern thought. Only place you don't see it is African thought. I haven't seen it there, but this notion of rising above and getting a wisdom that's beyond the human, right? This is the temptation of humanity for centuries, right? And what God is going to do is reorient her. We're going to see, right? Okay, let's go to the reorientation. What does God do in 3:16? How does he reorient her? Yes.
By binding her to humanity.
Exact to her husband, right? Absolutely. And through that, he says, your desire. By the way, that word in Hebrew has a semantic, a connection with turning. So it's not just desiring, but it's also turning to, right? So he's in fact turning her back away from the goddess thing that she had going, right? The divine realm, turning her back to her humanity, to her human partner, to her husband, right? And so we understand now to go back to your question, right? We understand what God is doing. He's turning her back to the man, and that is where she ought to find that wisdom, right? Because in Genesis 4, the first time the word knowledge comes back is when she knows Adam, right? In an experiential, deep, intimate way. It is through intimacy with the man that she's going to acquire wisdom. That's interesting. In other words, she can't get it herself. She has to be almost opened up or activated by the man for her wisdom to be released. That's where it becomes interesting, because we give wisdom to the man, we can save the man, orient the man, but the man also, through the intimate relationship, can activate our wisdom, open us up and release that wisdom, right? So we, in a way, activate each other, right? We protect and activate each other. So only through the intercourse with the man is her wisdom going to be released, or she will connect to her wisdom. You follow us? That's a beautiful role for y'all, right? Yes, go ahead.
Like, I don't know, maybe it's a compelling explanation, but there's still something about it that like is uncomfortable. Maybe that's like a feminism argument, but I don't know why. There's just something about it that just like
What
feels
makes you
off.
in
In terms of like, why does the woman need to get her knowledge from the man in such a physical manner? Like it doesn't.
I know, it's
seems
annoying,
kind of
isn't it?
debasing- It seems kind of debasing to the woman a little bit.
I feel you. Here's what you need to understand. The biblical text is inherently relational. So we need each other, gender-wise, to become who we fully are. In that sense, African thought is very similar to that. In other words, the woman cannot become a full woman without contact with the man. Likewise, the man cannot become a full man without contact with a woman. Just like the man needs us to redeem him, right? And to steer him, we need the man in the same way. So it's really an egalitarian type of activation. We need the man to awaken to our inherent, it's there, but it needs to be awakened, right? In other words, knowledge in the biblical text, the knowledge we ought to strive for, is relational. That's the knowledge, that's the wisdom of the woman, this relational wisdom, but she needs to be activated through relationship, right? Does that help a little bit to see that both are being mutually
Kind of,
activated?
but I have to think about it.
Do, go ahead.
I have permission to go back to that just for a
The
brief moment.
structure,
Yes.
yeah, sure.
It was said earlier that the woman did not know that she was not supposed to eat, but it was mentioned in 3:1 and 3:2. The serpent asks her, "Did God really say this?" And she says, "Yes, we may eat from the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, God said, do not eat, do not even touch." So Eve did know. That's one.
Yeah, okay.
Although he said it first before her creation,
Yes,
she did know.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with you.
Now, secondly, I also want to bring up the point of the man's curse is different from the serpent's curse. I believe
yeah.
that the serpent actually was punished
Yeah.
versus the man
No.
being not punished,
Mhm.
but also having a chance at a
Yes,
redemption.
yes.
But Eve does have a chance of redemption solely for the fact that the word punishment, if
Yeah.
we go back to Hebrew, the word punishment goes to the word onesh.
Yep.
And if you bring onesh down to its roots, it starts with ayin, which is to look deeply.
Yeah.
And then it goes tanash, fall back.
Good,
So you
good.
look back and you have this redemption. And if you look at the ways that he's punished, the serpent has no way of redemption. He's like, okay, you'll get this,
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
this,
yeah,
and
yeah,
this, right?
yeah.
You get nothing back in return.
Absolutely.
However, man, you will have a hard time to
Mhm.
make food, but you will get food.
Yes, yes,
You
yes,
will
yes.
you will have thorns and thistles, but you will eat from the grass in
Yeah.
the field.
Yeah.
You will sweat from your brow, but you will have bread.
Yes.
And then it says, finally, you will return to the ground, for it was the ground that you were taken. This refers to not just man, but to all mankind.
Yes.
So it's sort of a different type of
Yeah, absolutely.
of I wouldn't say punishment. I say
Mhm.
both will have a redemption. It's just Eve has a greater redemption.
By the way, it's to your point. Notice that the serpent is cursed, but not the man. It's the ground that is cursed. So that's another moment, redemptive moment, right? The man himself is not cursed here, right? Neither the woman nor the man are cursed.
Right, that's my question for this. Does Eve really die? If Adam is cursed to be like, if Adam is like cursed to like, unto dust shall thou return, right? But Eve didn't get that. So like, does Eve get killed in a way? You know what I'm saying? Like that. Like,
It's
is
interesting.
does she return to dust?
What you
So-
notice is interesting because she's associated with life and he's associated with death, right? And so there's something going on where, of course, literally, right, to go to the pshat, this return to dust is everyone, all of humanity, right? But it's interesting that in the text, right, life is connected to her and death is connected. It's interesting because in the Greek interpretation, the woman is connected to death. So here it's the flip it, right? So one last one, and then we go to the.
Yeah,
I'm about to redeem the man. Can I do it?
Just
Okay.
wanted to quickly.
Okay.
She doesn't die actually. If you look at 320,
Mhm.
the man named his wife Eve, and
Right, yeah,
Eve
Yeah.
in Hebrew is Chava, which relates to Chai,
Life.
which means life. So she really doesn't die. It's actually
She-
she's actually given the name of life.
Yeah.
It's the death of her desires, like you were saying,
Okay,
this
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
transition of like one
Yeah.
part of her died and then.
Yes, you can say that, right? I mean, nobody dies right now, right? You know, all gonna die later, but
Yep.
but let's go to that. Let's go now. Yeah. Huh? Yes, we are lucky. Yes, it is nice to carry life. Okay, let's go now to the man because we have the second part and he will rule over her. This is the most problematic part, right? Questions?
Punishment. No, he's just asking about onesh. When I brought up the word punishment in Hebrew is onesh. It's
The
like
word-
it's a
The word for curse here is arur.
Yeah, Onesh is not in the text. He's doing sod, mystical.
yeah.
You see how he's playing with the letters and the right. This is mystical interpretation, which is difficult to go into because you have to know the letters. But that's what you're doing, right? You tend to do that. No, that's good. That's good. You're seeing all the layers, right? You see he's looking at the letters of the Hebrew and drawing interpretation. This is already next level, right? Okay, let's go now to the man. This other passage now, we have to go to the second part, which is the most problematic, and he will rule over her, right? So we have to look at that. So before we understand this, how that's redemptive, because it doesn't sound redemptive to nobody, let's go into what was the man's issue, right? Now remember, the man was the king. Remember, he was in charge of cosmic harmony, correct? It is to him that was given the command, the limiting command not to eat. Remember, the man is associated with the law. He is the king which upholds the cosmic law and which in a sense preserves cosmic order. Remember, we talked about this, right? In Genesis 1. So now we can understand how the powerful repercussions of his eating of the fruit, right? He eats the fruit. What is happening if he eats of the fruit to the world? What is going to happen to the world? Is destroyed, right? So the man initially already had the rulership that, this mentioned here, but let's be very clear. Rulership, that word in Hebrew, mashal, to rule, is typically not over a single human being. It's used in the biblical text to talk about cosmic rule, right? So when he will rule over her, it's already weird because normally rule is supposed to be like reign, like a king. So what does it mean to reign as a king over her? That looks weird, right? So there's something else going on. So Adam already had cosmic rule, but what happened when he ate the fruit? He lost it, right? He lost the cosmic rule. And it's as though God in this moment is giving back his rule, right? Is saying, therefore you will rule again, right? through her love, you will rule again, right? Her desire is for you, and as a result, you will rule again. So that's okay. Then I'll get to the over her in a bit, right? But for now, do you see where I'm going with this, right? The punishment is in direct equivocal, is in parallel with the problem, right? So he messed up, he lost his kingdom, right? By taking the fruit, he essentially forfeited his kingdom for her sake because he loved her. See, this is what I love about Adam that we don't often point out. Adam was the only character in this whole 3 chapters who has a heart. She's very cold, right? There's a coldness to the woman that is uncomfortable. When you notice how much emotion the man has for this woman, right? Immediately he loves her when he sees her, and then he can't bear to lose her, and then he names her. We're going to see that in a second, right? So there's so much love in this man, right? And the woman is really having a hard time kind of growing into that, kind of more empathetic, compassionate, right, state. Yes, David.
So I'll give you the same objection I'm giving you before, and that like him looking at her and saying flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone is not interpreted by everybody to be a good thing.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, he's only recognizing her relative to who he
Yes,
is and not
yes.
independently for who she is. And then he fixes that mistake by then later naming her Eve.
Yes,
after this.
I like
So
that.
It's like now he's naming her based off of what she can do.
I like that.
She's the mother.
He's evolving too. Initially, it's like she's mine. She's like me. That's why I love her. But then little by little, she becomes her own person, right? So we'll see that. So notice that, right? So it's also interesting, the reciprocity. Her desire for the man, and out of this love that she gives him, he is given back his kingdom. It is as though the woman here empowers the man to rule again, right? So mashal, you can write down the Hebrew word mashal, which is rule here, mashal. That Hebrew word, by the way, forgot your name. What's your name again? Gubin. You mentioned Genesis 1 is the first moment where that word is used. And who is ruling?
It's like the sun and the moon.
The sun is ruling over the world. I mean, the sun is, this is magic, this is cosmic scope, right? It's not just, oppressing somebody, right? Mashal has a cosmic connotation. So when we see it again in the 2 chapters later, we have to maintain this cosmic connotation. It's not about the man oppressing the woman. You follow? It can't be. Because mashal has, in the immediate context, cosmic connotation. I'm going to hit you one day. Right? Do you follow? It can't be just he's persecuting her or oppressing her, right? So it has to be cosmic. So then what does it mean over her, right? That's the preposition. Now, that preposition is a preposition in Hebrew, b, you can call it b, which has actually many meanings. Mostly, when you look at the biblical text, it is translated over in the context of mashal. But, and this is really important, there's one passage in the book of Proverbs where it's translated through in the context of rule. And so we can connect to that passage, right? And say, well, maybe we ought to translate it, her desire for him, and he will rule through her, right? Through her love, through her wisdom, through her, right, her support, through her advice, he will become, right, again, the cosmic ruler he was meant to be. You follow? To the degree that he's open to her wisdom, that he's open to her love, that he's open to the woman in general, the man will rule in a way that is protective of the world rather than destructive. Makes sense? So again, this notion of they need to be together. Her wisdom is activated by the man, but the man needs her wisdom to rule justly. You follow? So that's how I'm seeing it. You cannot become anything by yourself in the biblical text. Your name is always given to you, right? In the biblical text. It's never, you can't become by yourself something. You always need to go through the relationship and then you become, right? You emerge. Does that make sense? Have I convinced you of that this text, the new interpretation? Right? Yes, go ahead.
So the rule of the D and make it through. Why is that?
Okay.
Forgot.
Yes, let me explain more slowly. The preposition b is usually translated in the biblical text as over. That's true. Majority of when you see mashal ba, it's rule over. But there's one instance, thank God, in the book of Proverbs, where you're in the context of rule, You don't have the word mashal, but you have synonyms. And there it's translated through. It's when Lady Wisdom in the book of Proverbs says, through me kings reign, through me princes rule. And the b here, same preposition, is translated as through. So in other words, the kings need wisdom in order to reign. Through wisdom, through connection with woman wisdom, they reign. You follow? So then I would then argue, why not then see here the translation, the preposition but translated as through, because we have a precedent, right? And that's how I come to the notion, her desire or her turning to the man, she's turned to the man, and through her love, he will rule justly. Isn't it gorgeous? I love it. No, not you? Okay, great. Any questions before I go to the big explosive ending? Which is very nice. Any questions or problems or comments? Okay, yes, was that a question? No?
Like-
You're just scratching here. Okay, now check this out. Check out the first thing man does with his newly found wool. This is the most beautiful moment of the Bible. Okay, it's the most beautiful moment. He turns to his wife. Look at this, chapter 3. Right after, okay, so God has just finished talking. Look at this man, right? I love this guy. God has just finished talking. It has ended in death. To dust, right? Dust you are. From dust you were taken, and to dust you shall return. That's how God ends, meaning dead end situation. You're supposed to all die, right? At that moment, man stands up and literally overturns the divine decree. I told you we had the power to do that, right? I mentioned this before. This is the first instance. He turns around, he looks at the woman and he says, you will be the mother of life, right? God has just decreed death. Man turns the decree around, turns to the woman who brought death into the world, turns to her, overturns her destiny, overturns the whole destiny of humanity into life. Do you see what he just did? This is incredible. God himself, the master of the universe, has decreed death, and Adam steps up and says, no, life, decrees life instead of death. You see the power we have, right? We don't use this power. Why? Right? Remember, I told you, we need to understand that we have intercessory power. We can shift the divine decrees around here, right? This is Adam's doing first instance, right? And he turns to the woman, that woman who probably felt like, she had destroyed the whole world through her mistake. He turns to her and says, you thought you were the mother of death, but from now on, you will be the mother of life. What love, right? What love and depth this man has at this point, right? I absolutely love Adam, right? So you got to give him that, right? So I know feminists don't like that he names her, but but you see, they don't understand something very important, is that in the biblical text, everything is relational. Identity is relational. Man gets his identity from the woman, just like the woman gets her identity from the man. You don't have yourself getting your identity. So when someone names you, it's very normal, right? Because you never get your identity from yourself. So and see how he names her, right? He's overturning her destiny to the better, right? Give me a man like that. I'm fine with that, right? So that's what I mean, right? There, of course, he's naming her, but he's naming her with a desire to redeem her, right? It's a redemptive gesture that he's giving her, right? And by the way, we can understand what it means to rule. Look how this is his first gesture of rule, right? He turns around and he empowers her. That's what it means to rule justly. It's not to be powerful and be a big, tough guy, right? It's about empowering everything around you, not about crushing everyone around you, right? But about giving a space for everything around you to breathe and to come alive. That's what it means. It's to be a gardener, right? Remember, that's what it means to be a king, is to be a gardener. What is a gardener? Does a gardener go around trampling over his the garden? No, the gardener is trying to make sure everything is breathing and everything is alive. That's the sign of a genuine ruler, of a genuine king. The king who crushes, right, and destroys and steps all over is not a legitimate king. It's not a king who is ruling justly, right? Okay, that's it, y'all. I gave you the whole okay, so we have just redeemed this beautiful passage, which has been used for centuries to exercise violence against a woman. Very often the biblical text is used to persecute, but when you really read it, there's nothing there, right? Yes.
So nobody has saw the text this way like how you have?
This is new.
Really?
We did this together. All this, I'm drawing on the others. Last spring, we did this together, right? I gathered a group of scholars. I'm like, let's look at this differently. I had the intuition there was something redemptive going on, but I didn't have all the details, right? Because I'm not a biblical scholar. So we worked together, and this whole structure is not me, right? This is them. And then we came, a lot of I'm just bringing you a synthesis of what we worked on, and it's really new. I'm really happy about it, right? This is, yes. Thank you. So if you want to read more, right, I drew from these guys, but try to find it, right? It's called Eve's Curse. And then just put my name and you'll see the special issue with all the other articles, and then share it, right? Share the world. Yeah, on Google.
Find
Just-
the Bible conference that we.
You'll find all the articles. Yeah,
Professor, I know I'm gonna give points off, but it's okay that they handed in.
is this now? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
but that's okay. You were here all along, weren't you?
Well, I came in late.
You do, I didn't even notice. You should have told me. I didn't notice. I don't know. Okay, great. All right, so Thursday, let's try and stay for 2 hours so we can do Cain and Abel. So do both Cain and Abel and the flood. So you're gonna read chapter 4 all the way to chapter, let's see, when does the flood end? Chapter 6, is that the ending of the flood? Go read also chapter 9. Yeah, all the way to 9. So chapter 4 to 9. And so you do your questions, you direct them at the flood and at Cain and Abel, and we're going to look at some very important passages. Too bad we don't have oh, we'll see. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to stop this.